Ukraine is losing. It believes it needs more weapons. It needs permission to use longer range weapons. It needs a miracle. Ukraine is desperate to change the calculus of foreign support. The Ukrainian people used to voluntarily donate money. 1,500 to 1,700 Russian casualties a day is the most absurd thing. Trying to convince Europe and the United States to continue funding this enterprise. It's the street, the Arab street, the Turkish street. The people in the street are fed up with this, and their anger is such that it cannot be ignored by the powers that be. So now you see Saudi Arabia, going forward and saying things that should have been said from the very beginning, but weren't, because remember, Saudi Arabia in the previous Trump administration was, part of this master deal called the Abrams Accord. The whole idea of the Abrams Accord was to basically put the nail in the coffin of a free Palestine by ensuring that the West Bank would never, be able to serve as the heart of a new Palestinian state. Abrams Accord allowed Israel to go in and just carve it up, steal more land, create settlements, etc., weakening the Palestinians, all in the name of trying to create a free Palestine, but it was always a lie. But what the Abrams Accord was also about was normalizing relations with Israel and the Gulf Arab states, particularly United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. And what people don't realize is that on October 6th of last year, 2023, Israel and Saudi Arabia were on the cusp of normalization. They were very close to striking a deal that would, create the opportunity for, intense economic intercourse. On September 9th or 19th of 2023, Joe Biden was in India as part of the G20, and he did a press conference where he announced the India, Middle East, European Economic Corridor, this wonderful concept that saw ships loaded with containers leaving Indian ports like Mumbai and docking in Dubai, offloading their containers from the ships onto trains, and then the trains would transit the United Arab Emirates, then Saudi Arabia, go into Jordan, through Israel to the Israeli port of Haifa, where they would be loaded back on the ships and taken into a Greek port, and then further on into Europe. This connectivity was there. And Benjamin Netanyahu, the same day that Biden gave his speech, delivered an address, I believe, at the General Assembly in the United Nations, where he said that this is the greatest day in modern Israeli history. This is how much of much magnitude this was. He said this deal, this creation of the India, Middle East, European Economic Corridor was a transformational moment that would forever change Israel's relationship with its regional neighbors and redefine Israel as a hub of economic and technological innovation, that Israel would become the center of a new economic engine that would operate in the Middle East and around the world. This would forever change Israel. This is Netanyahu speaking. That's not going to happen now. It's dead. Saudi Arabia has said that they will never consider normalization of relations with Israel until which time there's a free and independent Palestine whose capital is in Jerusalem. And Israelis like Netanyahu and people of his political ilk, they've forsworn that ever happening. They said that will never happen. We will not allow that to happen. So this India, Middle East, European Economic Corridor is dead, not going to happen. This is the reality of that summit. Turkey has these visions of being a regional economic power, to become a gas hub. That means that not only will they serve as a transit from gas from Russia, Turkmenistan, etc., into Europe, but that they will store the gas and become people who are setting the price for gas, that they will drive the market. One of the things that Turkey has been hoping for is to be able to tap into Israel's developing, gas infrastructure, the offshore the gas production that's taking place, and to bring that in, increase Turkey's profile as a regional energy hub. So Turkey's always been hesitant about doing anything that breaks relations with Israel, that disrupts relations with Israel. But now, because of the anger on the Turkish street, the government of Erdogan had to. He just announced that he's severing relations with Turkey. We'll see if this turns into a full-scale economic embargo. Will he stop the flow of Azerbaijani oil and pipelines across Turkish soil, loading on the ships that then take it into Israel? But this is a big deal because what we have are nations that historically have not been fully supportive. I mean, Turkey, has made lip service, but at the end of the day, until recently, Turkey hasn't done anything. I mean, Israel commits genocide, and Turkey says, "Oh, they're committing genocide," but Israel doesn't pay a price. Now Israel's starting to pay a price. Saudi Arabia has literally created the conditions for the end of Israel. Why do I say that? Because Israel won't be able to achieve its dream of being a regional economic hub. And right now, that's the only thing that will save Israel. Israel's economy is in tatters. It's not going to be business as usual. If Israel wants to survive, they're going to need to, basically upgrade their economic profile. And they can't do that unless they normalize relations with Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia says you can't do that until you create a free and independent Palestine. And Israel can't do a free and independent Palestine unless they're willing to dismantle West Bank settlements. And the moment Israel moves to dismantle West Bank settlements, you have a civil war in Israel, a literal civil war, which is the end of Israel. Israel has committed suicide. This is the only good news in all of the bad news that's out there, is that Israel has inflicted so much harm on itself. And even the Israelis admit it. I mean, people are out there going, Scott, you're smoking dope. Scott, you're this. Scott, you're that. Well, I did come up with this on my own. My brain actually came up with this on my own. But then I was pleasantly surprised when I saw retired Israeli brigadier generals give talks to Israeli television and say the exact same thing I'm saying. The exact same thing. Why would he say it? Because it's right. That's why I said it. It's sound analysis. Israel is a fundamentally broken nation state, and the politics of the demographics of Israel, what makes Israel viable from a demographic standpoint, means that the moment Israel starts to collapse and populations start to flee, which is going to happen when Israel is not economically, you can't sustain a population as internally displaced refugees in a nation where everybody expects it to be the land of milk and honey, but now it's going to be a land of poverty. People will flee. And when the Israeli population drops from 9 to 6 to 5 to 4 million, at a time when the corresponding Muslim population is still in the 12 to 15 million, the demographics dictate the outcome. And here's the last bit of good news I'm going to put out there for everybody here. Israel's nuclear weapons. I believe that Israel is destined to be absorbed into a single state known as Palestine. Just like white South Africa, the apartheid state, was absorbed into a single state that was black-dominated Africa. The moment both the government recognized, that's the South African leadership, recognized that this was inevitable, that apartheid was over, they had a nuclear weapons program. I believe they had 7 finished nuclear bombs. And they knew that if the black nationalists took over, that they'd have these nuclear weapons. And they said, we are never going to allow a black nationalist government to have nuclear weapons. So they went to the International Atomic Energy Agency and voluntarily opened themselves up to be disarmed. Admitted the program, brought inspectors in, they dismantled the weapons making capability, so that when Nelson Mandela took over, he was not the leader of a nuclear state. Israel, if it collapses in this way, collapses from internal rot as opposed to external force, which is another reason why I encourage the Iranians, don't attack. Let Israel die this natural death. And when they do so, there will come a moment when the Israeli government recognizes that they are going to transition into a Palestinian-dominated singularity, and they can't have them owning nuclear weapons. And Israel will turn to the International Atomic Energy Agency and will voluntarily disarm. And I think that's the fate of Israel's nuclear weapons. Yeah, let me just start off by saying that sometimes when I put on my my analytical hat, my analyst hat, and you start spewing, possibilities, scenarios, etc. It might look like I'm papering over the horror that's taking place in Gaza, the genocide that's taking place amongst the Palestinian people, and the mass murder that's taking place in southern Lebanon. And I'm not. It's there. It's real. Anybody who's listened to me talk about, Hind Rajab and how she was murdered by the Israelis, or talk about any of the Palestinian civilians, the women, the children that have been murdered and are continuing to be murdered, know that this rips my heart apart. I mean, it just is emotionally devastating. But the analyst has to rise above the emotions and try and look at things, with a clear eye, as they say. But I just think whatever scenario we talk about, we need to understand that these scenarios are built on the sacrifice of so many Palestinians. And whatever emerges from this, it will always be built on an edifice of horror and tragedy and murder and genocide of a scope and scale that hasn't been witnessed in modern times. So, I just wanted to put that down there, because sometimes, I start talking about, this policy, that policy, and it's as if these deaths aren't taking place. They are taking place. I'm fully cognizant of it. But, there it is. And now that I've given that introduction, quick remind me just what your question was. When this first started, I was in contact with I guess a Kuwaiti who was openly hostile against Iran and Hezbollah. And when Nasrallah gave his first speech, which I think was on October 9th or 10th, he was, Hezbollah has to come in and level Israel. And if it doesn't, look at the coward, look, he doesn't do anything and all that. And I wrote an article at the time that talked about what I called Hassan Nasrallah's, masterful escalation management. That what Hezbollah was doing was keeping the focus on Hamas and applying pressure to Israel without going to full-scale conflict. So escalation management, that is to keep the pressure. Israel responds, but you don't overreact. You respond gradually, and you keep this thing, under control. And this has been, and look at Iran. Look at Iran. They attacked Israel with, their first attack was just, a giant, show, sound and light show. Fire all these drones, all these cruise missiles in, get them shot down, but in the end have enough missiles get through to say, see what we can do. And then the second time, it was another more intense sound and light show. Well, here's 180 to 200 missiles. Almost all of them got through. Brilliant light show, boom, 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 boom. But neither one of those attacks were designed to kill Israelis or inflict significant harm on Israel. Escalation management. The same thing with Ansarallah, the Houthi. Escalation management. This has been. These are the two words that I think define the defeat of Israel, is the effectiveness of the axis of resistance and escalation management. Because in doing so, they have maintained control of the operations. There's John Boyd was a colonel, United States Air Force colonel, and I think his nickname was 32nd Boyd, but it might have been 3-Minute Boyd. I think it's 32nd Boyd. I don't know. But his thing was as a fighter pilot. When you start off as a fighter pilot, you do the pass, and as soon as you pass, you start to maneuver to see who can shoot each other down. It's the old fighter school. And Boyd's thing was within 30 seconds he could be in a kill position behind you, because he would engage in a series of maneuvers that had him being proactive and any pilot reacting. And by the other pilot reacting to his proaction, he was in control of the maneuvers, and he could eventually get in there. And he called it the OODA loop, observe, orient, decide, act. And a key thing about the OODA loop is it's called getting inside your enemy's decision-making cycle. That is, that your reaction time, if you draw a circle, is tighter than theirs. Theirs is out here. You're inside it, which means that you're leading the operation the whole time. You're defining this. You're causing the enemy to react to you as opposed to you reacting to the enemy. And escalation management has enabled the axis of resistance to be inside the decision-making cycle of Israel. They control the OODA loop, and that's why they're winning. So this is all about the axis of resistance. This is about the genius of Hassan Nasrallah, the genius of Sinwar, the genius of Raisi before, and the current Iranian leadership today, because they haven't allowed themselves to be compelled by Israel's bluster and actions into overreacting. What they've done is they have managed this fight, stretched it out, and Israel's breaking. And that's the goal and objective of the axis of resistance, is to break Israel down so that the possibility of a free Palestine becomes a probability. Israel's nuclear weapons program, and how, if Israel continues to collapse from within, that it will be disarmed. The Samson option is not a proactive, preemptive use of nuclear weapons. The Samson option exists when Israel is being attacked from without by external forces that are threatening to destroy Israel, to overwhelm Israel. And the Samson option is just that. Okay, we're going down, we're taking everybody with us. But it's a violent response to violent actions. The predicate is people attacking. Had the United States in 1988 or 89, with the fall of the Berlin Wall, decided to invade Russia, invade the Soviet Union, and engage in military action, the Soviets had nuclear weapons, and there would have been a nuclear war. But that's not how the Soviet Union collapsed. The Soviet Union collapsed from within. Internal domestic crises, politics brought the Soviet down. And so their nuclear weapons weren't a factor in that. If Israel collapses from within, from internal rot, from internal strife, civil war, etc., there's no trigger for the Samson option. The nuclear weapons are just there. They're not going to be used. And that's why I didn't bring it up. And that's why I see a scenario in which Israel collapses from its own rot. And then the weapons have to be turned over to the international community, as opposed to, and again, this is why I keep saying it in case any Iranians are listening or will listen, don't attack Israel. Because by attacking Israel with 1,000 or 2,000 missiles, you set in motion events that could lead to the Samson option being initiated. If you just let Israel die, Israel's drunk the poison. Just let the poison take effect. Let Israel die. The nuclear weapons of Israel will be dealt with by the Israelis and the international community. Patience. And I think I don't need to be telling the Iran in the comments section that are saying Iran has to attack, Iran has to attack, Iran. Why? That's a scenario that could lead to Iran losing. Right now, Iran's winning. Iran wins by doing nothing at this point in time, literally. do nothing and let Israel collapse from within. And there's nothing that Donald Trump can do to save. I mean, let's just parse it down bit by bit by bit. But first, I'm a big fan of setting the foundational principles at play here. Ukraine is losing. Ukraine is desperate to change the calculus of foreign support so that it can stop losing. It believes it needs more weapons. It needs permission to use longer range weapons. It needs a miracle. It's hard to give you an example about what I'm about to say. The Ukrainian people used to voluntarily donate money in support of the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, and indeed tens of billions of dollars have been raised over the course of the conflict for the Ukrainian military from the Ukrainian people. Right now, no money's coming in from the Ukrainian people. Why? Because they don't see any reason to continue to donate money to a lost cause. Now, if you're the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense and you're trying to convince Europe and the United States to continue funding this enterprise, you can't allow the reality of the battlefield to be the narrative that the West is embracing. You have to, shift the narrative, at least for public consumption. I think officials understand the truth, but convincing the American people